Ladies and gentlemen, another challenger has entered the ring. We're talking once more again about Sidney Crosby, Pittsburgh Penguins superstar, generational, NHL defining talent of the past 20 years, and going over where it is he can take his hockey playing talents next. Now, we've been speaking a whole bunch about the Crosby and Montreal angle, mostly because Crosby's agent, Pat Brisson, went out there and started a fire, acknowledging the connection. And Sidney Crosby himself also spoke out about that idea and how the fans in Montreal wanting him is a big honor. This was all over the past few days, so of course it's been a hot topic. And now we're seeing articles like this posted onto The Athletic. If Sidney Crosby seeks a trade, the Montreal Canadiens can offer exactly what he wants. Arpon Basu went out there and posted this. We're not going to dive into the article itself. There are a number of things in it that we've discussed already, but instead we are opening the floor to some of the other teams that could place themselves in the Sidney Crosby sweepstakes. Let's head over onto Spectors Hockey from earlier yesterday, September 12th, 2025, posted out there by Lyle Richardson. I like Spectors because they go out there and summarize a good amount of articles all at once, just so we don't have to keep on going back and forth to a whole bunch of different sources. But let's dive into the Ottawa Senators, let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens, and let's talk about the Colorado Avalanche. Should the Senators pursue Sidney Crosby? Via the Ottawa Sun, Bruce Garriock wondered if adding Sidney Crosby might make sense for the Senators should the Pittsburgh Penguins captain become available on the trade market. Garriock cited the analysts at TSN's Overdrive afternoon radio show, naming the Senators as one of the teams that might consider the possibility, suggesting they'll be trying to win the Stanley Cup within the next 2 or 3 years. Jeff O'Neill believes Penguins GM Kyle Dubas would want a talented young player like Jake Sanderson or top prospects for the 38-year-old Crosby, who was signed through 2026-2027 with an AAV of $8.7 million and a full no-move clause. Now, okay, that's kinda wild if I do say so myself. Sorry, Kirill, but that is crazy. Sidney Crosby to the Sens, is that even a possibility? Would the guy even be interested in going over to Ottawa? Unless they go out there and prove to the entire hockey world that they are to be taken more seriously as a Stanley Cup contender, I don't see how Crosby decides to go to Ottawa over a team like Montreal. And that's not me even saying, oh, Montreal is so much better than Ottawa. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that Crosby, with the circumstances that have been bestowed upon him as a human being and as a hockey player, with the hockey world focusing all their eyes and attention on him, it would be so obvious why he would choose to come to the Habs over a team like Ottawa. There's a connection there. The hometown fans absolutely adore him. Not that the Ottawa fans wouldn't, but there's already been that verbal expressed love from Montreal at the Four Nations. Crosby's always been linked to Montreal. He's been a Habs fan growing up. His dad was drafted by Montreal. It's Montreal, Montreal, Montreal. It's the biggest connection here. Ottawa, unless they show that they are absolutely a bona fide cup contender to be taken seriously, I don't see how Sidney Crosby would be like, oh, yeah, I'd go to Ottawa. I'd go there over Montreal. Like, if there's a trade to happen in any respect, I would assume Montreal is the forefront runner there. So Bruce Garriock acknowledging it, I mean, of course, he's got to go out there, write articles, he's got to respond to stuff talked about on TSN's Overdrive, but I don't think this is really in the cards at all, unless Sidney Crosby decided one day that he just likes Ottawa over all the other options that could be available for him as a trade destination. Let's dive into this other part of the article as well. The Montreal Canadiens have been mentioned as a destination because they were Crosby's favorite team growing up. O'Neill upset Canadiens fans by suggesting the Penguins would demand promising winger Ivan Demidov or Lane Hutson as part of the return. Garriock also noted the Colorado Avalanche are considered a potential destination, in part because of Crosby's friendship with Avs star Nathan MacKinnon. Same thing with the Colorado Avalanche. I think this team is a lot more poised and proven than a team like Ottawa or even Montreal at that point to consider as a trade destination. If Sid the Kid decides that he would rather play with Nate Mac Daddy McKinnon because Colorado is just that much of a better team than the Canadiens, I can understand that. I just don't see the Ottawa Senators as a team that's good enough to get that kind of an outcome. This is what Spector's note goes out there and says, Crosby will draw plenty of interest if he's willing to be traded before his contract expires. The Sens will likely look into it, whether they have the assets that would tempt the Penguins or the willingness to meet the asking price, that's another matter. As for the Canadiens, trading a top prospect like Demidov or a rising star like Hudson would go against everything that their management has been building over the past 3 years. They seek success over the long term, not short-term gains that could delay or derail their goal of perennial Stanley Cup contention. And that is absolutely the case here with Kent Hughes as well. We understand Montreal is not just making a Crosby trade for the sake of sacrificing the future and going all in now. If a trade were to be done, it would be because it works, and it fits with Montreal's vision of what they want to build. They are not going to sacrifice the long-term future for, if we're being optimistic, maybe 5 years of Sidney Crosby. That's like really optimistic. If Sidney Crosby decided to retire in 2028, I don't think anybody would be surprised about that. He's still good. He can still be a top-tier contributor. He's a 90-point superstar still. But he is getting old, so I do question if Sid comes over to a team like the Habs, just how much does that play into the quote-unquote long-term? Colorado's in a spot where they want to get back to the Stanley Cup victory party like they were a few years ago. They've had a few stinkers in the postseason since that victory, and you're starting to see some growing frustration out of stars like Nathan McKinnon. So if Sidney Crosby were to join the Colorado Avalanche, who is, I think, most would agree the best team out of the three we've discussed today, I would not be surprised if that ultimately becomes a top destination as well. Now, we have made some other commentaries talking about other names. LA has been tossed in there. Of course, Vancouver will always be a destination for anybody because the Canucks fan base can go pretty crazy sometimes. But if these three teams start to emerge as top destinations or teams that are most interested in Sid, then we're going to have ourselves a pretty fun bidding war to pay attention to over the next few years. Now, I also do think that the price should be noted here as well. I mean, a lot of folks have gone out there and talked about what it would take. Jake Sanderson in Ottawa, of course, we don't necessarily think that the Sens would be chomping at the bit to trade Sanderson away, even if it is for Sidney Crosby. And you can say the exact same thing about Lane Hutson and the Montreal Canadiens. Jeff O'Neill in particular got everybody pissed off in Montreal when he said that Hutson would be part of the starting price. It just wouldn't work that way for Montreal and what they're trying to build. So ultimately, we're going to have to see some other assets. Maybe some different prospects that aren't really too valuable. Maybe some other draft picks. Who knows? If you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What kind of trade package do you think is acceptable for Sidney Crosby? I doubt that you're going to get any super significant roster players coming back. You're not going to do Crosby for McDavid, something like that. The team that you're sending Crosby to would want to be competitive still, so you're going to have to maybe take the loss in terms of the immediate on-ice product. But if it's Ottawa, Montreal, or Colorado, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What kind of trade price do you think works here? And who do you think amongst these three teams would be the most likely? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.